Hey everyone, and welcome to the Private Podcast, where we plug in and explore the intersection of privacy, human rights, technology, and democracy. I'm your host, Derek E. Silva. On today's Private Podcast, I'm joined by Amit Serper. He is currently the Director of Security Research at Sternum IoT and a former member of an elite cyber unit in the Israeli government. Amit is a researcher who came up with a workaround that disabled the infamous NotPetya ransomware back in June 2017 and has a storied career beyond that. Amit, welcome to the show.
Hi, it's great to be here with you.
Thanks. Great to have you here as well. When did you first become interested in cybersecurity?
So, it was sometime during my early teenage years, I think like 12 or 13. When I was 12 or 13, I just turned 36, so you can do the math. So it's been a while. And around that time, I had a friend who was a year older than me that said, Windows is for losers. You shouldn't use Windows. You should start using other operating systems. And I said, yeah, I know that there's a thing called Linux. And he's like, no, 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 not Linux. You need to use FreeBSD. So
Oh
started
boy.
using, yeah, yeah, yeah. So there I was, a 13-year-old kid compiling kernels and drivers and stuff just to get like the basic functionality out of my machine, like having a working sound card or even connecting to the internet. Back then it was a dial-up modem. Even getting that working on FreeBSD was quite a task. So
Yeah.
as I started getting familiar with Unix based systems and compiling stuff and doing like a lot of low level things with my machine, along with that came my interest in security.
So, all to impress a friend, you
Well,
spent all this time.
not to
You're
impress,
like,
just
I'm just as cool as you, buddy.
yeah,
Like,
let's say
don't
just
you
to have
tell
a
me.
friend, just to have a friend.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't. I don't know why. I think I just got tired of. So I'm a few years older than you. So I was in college by the time. Actually, probably right around the same time you started compiling FreeBSD for yourself. I replaced Windows 2000, I think, on my laptop, or Windows ME, one or the other, and went strictly Mandrake Linux. Like,
Wow,
forget
I was
Microsoft. I'm
googling
done.
Mandrake yesterday. I was like, what is it? Does it still exist? I was just googling it
I
yesterday.
I think it's Mandriva now, but it's
No,
definitely
it's
not
been
one of the
dead.
more
Like
popular.
Mandriva has been dead,
It's
I think,
dead.
for like at least a decade, I think.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got an Intel NUC behind this MacBook that dual boots Windows 11 and Zorin OS, which is pretty nice. Uh, Still has driver issues.
This is my work machine, and on my work machine I use Pop OS Linux.
Okay, yeah,
I like it. It's great. It's pretty good.
yeah,
Trivial
that's good.
things, trivial things are still a pain, but it's Linux, so
It'll 2023 is the year of the Linux desktop.
that
I
is the
always
year
say
of the
that.
Linux desktop, without a doubt. Yes, we are there.
So you started messing around with FreeBSD, making your way probably with your US Robotics 56K modem, or maybe even
Yes,
worse. Yes.
exactly. Hardware
Almost
modem,
everybody had a
ISA.
US Robotics modem.
Yeah, ISA slot. Yeah,
Yes. Oh my gosh. I forgot ISA slots existed.
it was
Um,
huge because you had the
yeah.
the the we used to call them back then Win modems, the small like software modems, and they were like tiny cards like this size. And I had
Yeah.
to get like that hardware modem that was like this big.
So how did that go from messing around with FreeBSD, connected to the internet, figuring out OU drivers, to like your first research project in information security? Was there something that, like, maybe a website you were using every once in a while, or something you heard from a friend that led you to digging in a little bit deeper?
So in 2001, broadband started rolling around in Israel. So in 2001,
Hmm.
ADSL was already rolling out in the country, but my neighborhood wasn't connected yet to the new network and everything. But the local cable company started running its trials on cable internet. So
Yeah.
I got a call and they were like, "Hey, would you like an uncapped, you know, cable line for free?" And I'm like, "Sure." And because that was, when they were doing the trials before they started selling it. So, one day I just had a bunch of texts coming into my house and setting me up with a cable modem and everything. And I said, okay, wow, I have like so much bandwidth now, because the most of the country back then was using 56K modems, and
Yeah.
I had like an uncapped. I think it was like 8
Three
megs up,
megabits. Eight.
like 8 megabits up, which at that time was like
Oh,
insane. And I got another, like, I used to get old computers from my friends, and I used to like I used to take all of their parts and build like a computer from all of the old broken machines. And I actually have this. I have a picture of it in my blog. I had another computer on my desk which I used as a web server, and I used to sell web hosting off of my free cable line in my room when I
nice.
was a teenager. So naturally, I was hosting back then. There were PHP Nuke was like a really popular
Yeah.
um, content management system. So I used to have a lot of people with that system, and that was riddled with bugs. And I started, and my machine kept getting exploited, and I didn't understand why and how. So I started looking into that, and I started understanding that there is such a thing as security, and you should set the permissions of everything in the right way. And after a short while, I read an article. I don't remember where. I read an article that cable modems can be hacked to lift the cap, because it was uncapped, but I still had this like 8 megabit limit or whatever. So I
Right.
started reading about that, and after a few months, I managed to hack my own modem, and release the speed cap. And actually, the cable company they came knocking on my door once, and they wanted to see the modem, but I opened the door, and I was like this 13-year-old short kid with like a high voice. And they're just like, oh, it has to be the wrong house. And they left.
Oh,
So that
jeez.
was like, yeah,
Lucky
that was
you.
like one of my first like successful hacks. I mean, I also messed around with like NetBus and Sub7, and like port scanning my ISP and see if there's like open NetBus ports, and I'd used to like use NetBus to connect to those machines. And like sometimes I would mess with the people, sometimes I would be like a good guy and I would delete the Trojan and everything. But that period of time in my life got me got me interested in like security, and learning more about it, and learning more about how to properly um, harden servers for them to be secured and all of that.
I was just looking up PHP Nuke because I used it as well. Um, I don't remember which website I was managing. There's still a Persian version being managed on GitHub,
Oh,
actually.
wow. I'm
Um,
shocked it still exists.
yeah, it's that one's, and then but phpnuke.com or whatever leads to a Spanish website about working with PHP and MySQL databases. So
Yeah, that was
it's
like the first days of the lamp stack.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I remember it well.
Yeah, and after that, I mean, in Israel, you have to go, like, you have mandatory military service. So in high school, I studied computers, like computer science, and the schools, I guess, they share like with the military list of students that study certain things. And I started getting invited to all of these tests for all of those different units in the military, and then I ended up being in a weird undisclosed office building in a really weird part of town that I had nothing to do in, other than being tested for this unit where they didn't even tell me which unit it is. And after a very long and gruesome security clearance process, I ended up doing my military service in government intelligence agency. So I was actually not doing my military service in the army. I was like working
Right.
in a government office with a bunch of people that could be like at the age of my dad. And I worked there for, I ended up staying there even after my service. In total, I was there for 9 years, where I did a lot of like offensive and defensive security research, low level research, exploitation, vulnerability research, like pretty much everything that has to do with security and those things. I've probably done it there.
Learning how to spin up centrifuges in another country's nuclear reactor.
Uh,
I didn't ask. I don't know what you're talking. I don't know what you're reacting to.
Stanford.
Um, that's fine. So, what was that experience like? I mean, like, yeah, obviously, you can't talk a lot about a lot of details. I understand that you don't even need to say it, but um, like, what was your day actually like? You get to work. You're reading mailing lists. You're looking at CVE reports.
You
You're
mean
just
when I
making
worked at the
like,
government?
yeah, yeah,
It's a job. I mean, it's when I started there, I was like, oh my god, everything is so secret. How will I be able to keep my mouth shut? I bet I'm gonna do so many cool things, and oh my god, oh my. And then after a month, it's like it's a job. You get there, you do your stuff, you go home.
yeah.
But it's like you'll have require like with me, like when I was dealing with vulnerability research, for example, my boss would come and would say, like, they would put like devices on our desks and they'd say, we need code
Mm,
execution on this, and we need it ready in a month, we need it ready in 6 months, we need it ready in a week, we need it ready in 2 days. So it would be stuff like that where you'd have like on demand requests to find ways to run code on a device that you've never seen in your entire life, and you just gotta find a way to make it work. Or just like any other software development organization or tech company, we'll have long-term goals that we need to reach, would have like products that
mhm.
we need to build for various departments. It's kind of hard, when you can't talk about things, but it really is. It's a job like any other job. You're just dealing with things that you can't talk about, but it's a high it's a high intensity job sometimes, because sometimes there's like an operation that's going on, or something that is bigger than myself and my bosses, and like way above our pay grade, that happens,
Right.
and we need to provide support for it. Or if there is a war, which happens every other week in Israel, and if
Yeah.
there's a war or like a military skirmish or whatever, so there are those things you got to do. So there's a lot of very interesting, like very intricate, very weird projects that we did. Like I remember uh, getting at one point, it's been it was a controller for, I think, a car wash machine, like the big
Yeah.
machine that like wash your car. So like it
Right.
was a Windows CE running controller of that thing, and they're like, yeah, we need to find bugs on it, and they don't tell you why. And it's like,
It's like, because at some point we're gonna trap some person in a car wash or something and just
we're
like
gonna
not let them
we're
out.
gonna
I don't know.
clean
Like,
we're gonna clean up some bad guys, I guess. I don't know.
we're just gonna. I to me, it's more like I like maybe you don't even know what it ended up being used for, but I just imagine this situation of like a weird Mission Impossible type situation where the bad guys, are taking their car through a car wash. Like, whoever's managing the operation flicks a switch. The door won't open now. The back door won't open now. Secret, it's not Secret Service, but like some task force is all dressed in like scuba suits so that they don't get wet and like open up the doors, get out, like, let's go.
And a person gets like completely drenched in hot wax or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, as I said, it's a job, and like you learn, you don't ask questions, and sometimes you are involved, and sometimes your opinion matters, and sometimes it
Mhm.
doesn't. So it really, also, it's been so long. I've been out of that out of that part of my life is been over for almost a decade now. So it's been a
Yeah.
while, and I've been living in America for the last 6.5 years. So it's been a while, but it was a good, it was a really good, it was a great time to learn things, and I got to do a lot of cool things, especially at a very young age. I mean, I started there when I was 19,
Yeah.
and I spent so much time there. So my formative years, so to say, were there. So like my the end of my teenage years and all the way until I was almost 28, I was there. So
Yeah.
I learned a lot of things. I did a lot of cool stuff. I had an insane amount of responsibility. When I think of it nowadays, it's crazy. Like in all of the work, in all of the jobs that I had since then, I didn't have that much responsibility over like budget and things that
Oh
can
wow.
actually, yeah, it's nuts. Like I, as a 23-year-old, I was managing a project that in dollars, like the dollar amount of it was like something like $850,000 that you know I was building stuff with that money, which is nuts, like when you think
Hmm.
of it
Hmm.
nowadays. But it was an amazing experience, and I had amazing bosses, and I learned so much from it. But eventually it was time to move on and go to the industry.
Yeah. What about, just one more question about that? Like, what about on the defensive end? Does any particular event stand out in your mind of like, we're being attacked, all hands on deck. We need obviously like some sort of vulnerability is being exploited, and now we need to patch it, or we need to defend against it, or what have
So
you.
I did mostly I was like the defensive part that I did there. I was building like secure systems.
Oh,
For
okay.
example, a laptop like that, someone will use, but that laptop can only be operated by that one person that owns it. And if you try to do just the smallest thing that's outside of the norm, the machine will like literally self-destruct. I mean, it won't explode, but the drive will be destroyed and like those kind of things. So secure computing
Yeah.
and um and like taking a system and hardening it to the point of insanity. So like that sort of thing. So I wasn't doing like SOC work or
Okay.
real time incident response and mitigation. That wasn't what I did there in the defensive part
Okay.
of my.
Sure. No problem. Um, So you're with Sternum IoT now. Have
Right.
you spent some time at Akamai? Like, are there any highlights from between your time with the government intelligent unit and your time with Sternum that really stands out to you, or maybe were really pivotal in making sure you're still interested in the industry, or like accelerating your career or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. So when I decided I wanted to leave the government, I had um, two good friends that used to work with me at the government, and they had founded a company called Cybereason.
Hmm.
And so when I opened my LinkedIn page, the first message that I got was from Lior, who is Cybereason's CEO and co-founder, and his message was like, "Hey, great seeing you here on LinkedIn." That is, he was already like at that time he already left Israel, moved to Boston to build Cybereason HQ here, and he was like, "Why won't you come and join us?" And I said, "Nah." And then another friend that worked there sort of like ambushed me into an interview, and I ended up joining Cybereason. And with Cybereason, it was very interesting because I back then the company was very small. Like when I left Cybereason, it had over like almost like 1,500 employees. When I joined Cybereason, there was like 18 or 20 of us,
Wow.
and it was like this cool startup environment. We had like a really simple but cool office in Tel Aviv, and we were like all friends, and like working there was just so much fun at that time. And we were building a product from scratch, and we were trying to make what was then at least probably the best security product in the market, the best EDR platform, because that whole thing was just developing there. That was in 2014, so it's been a while. And with Cybereason, I had the privilege of learning a lot of things because I'm not a Windows security guy in Origin. I'm a Linux
Hmm.
guy, so I learned a lot of Windows security over there, and I've done a lot of cool projects that some of them were very public. I think the first public thing I did was, if you remember, the hacking team breach in 2000. I want to say 16, no, 15.
Yeah, they're about. Yeah.
So I was like, me and one of my friends who worked with me back then, we were like the first people in the world that got a hold of the entire data dump that went out of there. So we
Okay.
were just working day and night on understanding everything. We rebuilt their environments like in our lab, and we did this like series of articles and lectures in Tel Aviv about what was on the leak, and we demoed their products like live on stage. And the presentation, actually, you can still find it if you go to hackedteam.lol. Like that will show you our slides from back then. I think that URL is still up. And um and after I did
Yeah.
that, first public thing, because I was pretty anonymous. Like, if you work when you're working for the government, no one really knows who you are. So I opened up a
Right.
Twitter account and I started tweeting about security, and I started being more involved in the community. And with Cybereason, then Cybereason decided that they want to go into like they want to make a product for Macs. So in like 2 weeks, I read every single Mac OS internals book I could find, and I started leading the security research on Mac and then Linux at the company. And we built. I was like part of a small team where we built Cybereason's first iteration of their Mac product, and then the Linux product. And when I moved, and then in 2016, I got offered by Cybereason to relocate to Boston, which is where I'm at now, because Cybereason's HQ was in Boston.
Hmm.
Because I used to travel a lot here, and eventually at one point I was like, hey, maybe you should just move here. And I'm like, okay, cool. I moved here, and I was starting to do a lot more public facing research. So speaking at conferences, and writing blog posts, and sharing a lot of knowledge and things that I did at the company back then. And in 2018, I was, for 4 months straight, I wasn't at home on weekends because I was traveling and speaking at different conferences literally every week, to the point of like burnout. And um and 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 that was like great, because I met a lot of great people, and I got very mingled in the industry and the community, and made a lot of like good friends that really helped me later along the way. So that was a great time. And at Cybers, and also I I built Nocturnus, which was there like the team that does all of the advanced research, the stuff that gets published, the stuff that gets picked up by the press. And we found a lot of crazy things. I mean, I think the last big thing I did there was in 2019, I think, or 18, where we found that several internet service providers were hacked by, sorry, several cellular service providers were hacked by China, and they've been there for years and siphoned like a ridiculous amount of data out of there. That got a lot of traction. I even went to Congress to brief some people on Capitol Hill, which was an amazing experience, especially for me as an immigrant.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of that stuff. But then also I left Cybereason 2 years ago. Worked for another company that ended up getting acquired by Akamai. It was Guardicore, and here I am now at Sternum.
Cool. It's just seeing if I could find something about the. Oh no, you had a press release written about you joining Gardacore Labs.
Yeah, pretty much. There's a press release every time. It's not
That's
me. I'm not
cool.
the one initiating it. I swear.
That's okay. I was just seeing if I could. Oh, there we go. A likely Chinese hacker crew targeted 10 phone carriers, and so that came up from Wired. So your name's probably
Yeah,
in
that
there
was
somewhere. Yeah,
Operation Salt
June
Stop.
2019.
But in
Cool.
Cybereason there was also the NotPetya incident that sort of made me internet famous. Like that was like the I talked so much about it that I even forget about it now. But that was nuts. I mean, like finding a way to stop such an attack, and having all of the attention from the press, from the industry. It was nuts.
Yeah.
But it
So
was
NotPetya was the ransomware I think got it from a Russian group, maybe the Bear
Sandworm.
one or something like that, right? Sorry.
Sandworm. Sandworm
Sandworm.
was
Okay.
the threat actor, and there's also a book with the same name by Andy Greenberg that covers the
Right.
whole story about NotPetya, and I mentioned there and like the whole experience. It's a great book. Um,
So like how did you actually come to what like, can you tell us just like a little bit for anybody who doesn't remember or maybe wasn't paying attention at the time, like what was NotPetya? I think there were some other variants involved as well, and like what did you find that allowed you to help to take it down and stop it from spreading further?
yeah. So first of all, NotPetya was originally it was perceived as a ransomware attack, but it wasn't. It was a wiper. The sole purpose of NotPetya was to get in the computer, corrupt all the data, and that's it. I mean, it looked like ransomware, it behaved like ransomware. It was trying to imitate a piece of ransomware that was called Petya. That's why it's called NotPetya, because when people thought it was Petya and they started to look into it, they were like, That's not Petya," and that was and that and hence the name. And
Yeah.
what happened was it was a very very sophisticated attack where a Ukrainian software company, I forget their name, Intellect Services, something like that. The product name is MEDoc, and MEDoc is like sort of like the Ukrainian version of QuickBooks or something like that, where if you are doing business, at least that was the case at the time, if you were doing business in or with Ukraine, you have to like file your taxes and whatever through that piece of software. So that means
Okay.
that pretty much any Ukrainian business and any business that does business within the country of Ukraine will have that piece of software installed somewhere in their organization. So the threat actors did something very sophisticated where they hacked into, again, I think it's Intellect Services. I'm pretty sure that was their name. They hacked into the company that makes MEDoc, and they basically contributed some code into their code base that allows the threat actors to run code on, like, run whatever they want, like arbitrary code on every computer that has the installation of MEDoc. So they basically Trojanize the code base, and every version that was built and shipped to customers had that extra functionality contributed by Sandworm. And the way that the threat actors could identify the business that runs the software was every business has an identifying number, just like in the US, where you have
Right.
a tax ID or a social security number or whatever. So it's the same concept. So at that point, the threat actors had the ability to say, "Oh, okay, I see that like this university is, for example, is running MEDoc, or this traffic control authority is running MEDoc," and
Yeah.
they could target everyone that way. So NotPetya was basically deployed to a bunch of organizations through that covert channel that was being placed in MEDoc, and organizations around the Ukraine started getting ransomware to the point of getting not completely knocked offline. So ATMs stopped working, public transit stopped working, traffic lights stopped working. It was sort of like very apocalyptic. Like things
Yeah.
just started shutting down in Ukraine. But the way that NotPetya was working, it was using a bunch of exploits that leaked, I think, from the NSA to propagate in the network and infect more and more and more computers. And sometime it just got out of hand and it started infecting machines outside of Ukraine. So
Yeah.
in the book Sandworm, Andy Greenberg details an incredible story that Maersk, the international shipping company, got knocked completely offline. Their ships couldn't get into ports because all of their systems were offline because they were encrypted. And the story on how they restored service is incredible. They had like this crappy machine somewhere in Africa that was too slow and didn't get infected yet because it was too slow and it was like on a really crappy internet connection. But
Yeah.
they flew a person in there. They took the hard drive, came back to it's a crazy story. I really recommend the book. So and I was, while all of that was happening, I was on vacation in Israel, literally in my parents' living room, watching TV with my dad, and I had my laptop with me, but I didn't have any of my like VMs and tools. All I had was just like IDA Pro on a Mac, and I took the sample of the malware, did some static analysis, and while everybody was trying to find the cryptographic function that keeps things from being encrypted, I'm not a crypto guy, so I didn't even look at it. I said, oh, I wonder if there's a way, to make it crash or to make it not to work. And then when I looked in the code, I saw that there was a function there. There was an internal function inside the malware that checks if a file exists, and if a certain file in a certain location exists, and if it does, it'll just call the Windows API of exit process, which is kills the process. So I was like, okay, interesting. I mean, if we could plant that file there ahead of time, the malware will not run. So
Right.
found out what was the name of the file that you need to create, and I wrote that on Twitter, and people start verifying it all over the world. And that night I just didn't sleep. It was just like press and media, and people from security companies want to talk to me, and it was just like crazy because we had to spread that word around the world, that people would put those files in place. So you start seeing videos on YouTube that are telling you how to do it, and people sharing like PowerShell scripts that do it automatically for you. It was incredible to see that. And back then I had like, I don't know, like a couple of hundred followers on Twitter. I ended that night with a couple of thousand, and that incident sort of like changed the trajectory of my career.
And then you became internet famous, if you weren't already.
Yeah, for a few minutes. Yeah.
For a few minutes. um,
The high point of that was when I was in Israel. The day after the whole thing happened, I needed to speak at a conference in Tel Aviv, where I was presenting like some IoT vulnerability I found with a friend. And you can see that talk is up on YouTube. If you look for my name and write B-sides Tel Aviv or B-sides TLV, you'll find it.
yep.
First of all, you'll see the huge bags under my eyes, and like how how ecstatic I was, and how like weird and surreal everything was. But there I had like a CNN journalist waiting to interview me, and I had another journalist from Russian state television waiting for me to
Nice.
interview me. Yeah, and they were like, "So, do you know who's behind it?" And I'm like, "I don't know.
You.
I don't know." I said, "I don't deal with attribution. I don't know." It was just the whole thing was just so surreal.
Wow. Okay, so you've had a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and now you're working at Sternum. What's your position there? What does Sternum do? That sounds like you're focused on IoT, probably.
Yes. So at Sternum, we're a product company, and we make a product that is a runtime security product that sits on the device. It's code that you deploy. Like if you have I don't know, a router, a security camera, an industrial controller of some sort, whatever it is, you need to deploy our product on your device, and we make it
Okay.
very easy and very simple to do it. Whether you're running something on based like on embedded Linux, or you have some real-time operating system on like a microcontroller, we have a solution for that as well. And
You still support Windows CE?
no. We actually had an inquiry about Windows embedded, or whatever they call it, or Windows for
Mhm.
IoT. I don't know. We don't have a solution for that as of right now.
That does
Uh,
exist. I know that, or at least it existed a few years ago. I don't know how
no,
popular it is.
it does exist. Maybe it runs I don't know, like car washes. I have no idea. Um, but yeah, so our product is coming to our intention is to solve a very complicated problem, where and a very painful one, where you have a lot of IoT vendors, or people or companies that have IoT devices in their most sensitive environments. So it could be like factories, and like giant machines that.
Executive, yeah, or
Sorry.
good, like executive offices, human resource, like behind a human resource, water sensors somewhere, like all sorts of
Yes,
places where,
all of those things that are often
yeah,
in critical positions in companies and networks, and they are often criminally insecure. And and there is a problem with that. When you talk to even vendors, when you talk to vendors that make those devices, they have a problem because these devices doesn't have they don't have a lot of computing power, right? um, they're often being acquired and deployed in the field, and then they're just there for like
Hmm.
15 years, and they never receive updates, and they were never designed with security in mind in the first place. So you have a lot of security products that are in the perimeter, so to say. So you'll have like firewalls or other like IoT security products, but they're like network based. They're adjacent
Hmm.
to the device, not running on the device. And the difference between that and what we do is that when you have a solution, sorry, that is like adjacent to the device, it's often based on network telemetry or something like that, and you can often miss a lot of things. I mean, with NotPetya, you had something that was added to the code base of the that software, and no one knew that it was there, and it was there for a while, right? So it's the same thing. Like those IoT devices can be fairly easily exploited in some cases, and they are connected to the internet. They have the ability to run code, and in many cases they're a very lucrative target for an attacker, because it can allow an attacker to use that device. And it happened before, in I've seen it in my own eyes. A device can be used as like a tunnel into the network, for example. And I have stories. And so what we do is we have an on-device solution, as I said, and we know and we know how the operating system behaves. We can see everything that happens, or almost everything that happens on the device from a very low level, and we know how exploitation looks like, and we know what exploitation is, and we know what is the normal behavior of a device, and we know how it behaves when things are not normal. So you could be in a situation where, if you are an IoT vendor or an IoT, like, think that you are like a big internet service provider that deploys modems for its customers, and you're giving the
Right.
customer a modem or a router or whatever. um, that firmware that runs on the device was built sometime in the past. You're not guaranteed that you're going to get any updates or patches or security updates or whatever. So you're in a problem, because if there is a vulnerability that now gets published, it started to get exploited in minutes from its publication.
Yeah.
um, if you have our product installed, you basically don't need to worry about those things, because we don't care if it's a 0 day or a 1 day. We know that the behavior is not it's not standard behavior. We know that the device is being exploited, and we're basically eliminating. We're mitigating the exploit as it happens. We're mitigating the exploitation as it happens. So, for example, if you have a command injection vulnerability on a device, we will see that a command injection exploit is trying to be used, and we will just terminate it as it happens. So our point is basically, listen, you don't need to like you need to stop chasing security patches. It's not sustainable. If you are again, I'll use that example. If you're an internet service providers and you have a provider, and you have, like, I don't know, thousands or tens of thousands or sometimes hundreds of thousands of modems deployed,
Yeah.
how do you patch them? How do you do that? Like, you need to like actively do that, and that is a lot of work. If you bind our product with your firmware, you're basically good, and you can forget about those things. So in my position at Sternum, I'm the director of security research. So in my team, we're doing two things. One thing is a lot of security research that um, is related to the product. So making our product better, detecting more stuff, preventing more stuff, making sure that we're ahead of
Hmm.
the curve, that we know what's going on in the exploitation field. That is one task. The other thing that we do is we do a lot of security research on various products. Anything from consumer devices, such as this like smart outlet that I've abused, and I also have like a small workbench here where I do a lot of my
Yeah.
hardware hacking and hands-on like hardware research on. And it could be anything from like consumer based device to like a firewall that costs a nice amount of money. So everything, if it's embedded and if it has a CPU on it and it's connected to a sensitive point in the network, we'll try to take it apart, find vulnerabilities in it, and disclose it to the vendors as soon as we find them. So right now, last week we've disclosed 3 different vulnerabilities to 3 different vendors, and is something that we think is very important because IoT devices are everywhere, literally
Yeah.
everywhere, and the vast majority of them are not very secured. And I'm being very gentle with my phrasing here, and we want to change that. So one way that we can change it is through our product, but another way that we can change it is through responsibly disclosing vulnerabilities to vendors. And this is something that we do and other companies do, and I strongly believe in doing that because it makes everyone safer. So
Yeah. It almost sounds like your team is kind of like Google's Project Zero, where they're actually looking for 0 days and things like that and
yes,
responsibly disclosing them. And if, the vendor doesn't respond for 90 days, then publicly exposing them because, that there's some industry norms that everybody kind of works with. And like, if you don't respond within like, I think it's 90 days, we're going to go public with this and try to make you act because, this is
yes.
irresponsible now, as you said, to,
Yes.
to just
Right
leave this
now
stuff
we have
open.
we've disclosed the vulnerability. For example, the vendor acknowledged it. They said thank you. We will issue CVEs. It's been almost a month. We didn't hear from them, so we're gonna pressure them a little bit probably next week if we don't hear anything from them. But because we found a critical vulnerability that allows us to
Yeah.
run arbitrary code on a bunch of devices with like 2 packets. So
Well, you actually you posted a picture with that Fortinet device on your Twitter account. Is that a recent
no, that was a joke.
vulnerability discovery?
That was a joke because I have a command injection tattoo on my arm. So yeah,
Okay.
so and it was just on the day that another Fortinet device, they discovered like another command injection device. So there was like a joke in like one of the groups that I'm in that um, Fortinet devices are now de facto backdoors because there's like a new vulnerability every week now, which kind of sucks. And
Wonderful.
so I posted a picture of me holding that device next to the back door of my house with my command injection tattoo showing, and I said in the
Yeah.
photo, 2 back doors and a command injection vulnerability. But um, yeah, that's just that is like I recently became a dad, so I'm trying to bring my dad joke into the security world. I think I'm failing miserably, but I don't know.
I
You tell me.
laughed.
Oh, great, good.
I understood it. I went to school to become a sysadmin and a network admin. So so I know Fortinet. I've done research on Fortinet devices as part of a previous job at an IT research company like Forrester and Gartner, but smaller and Canadian. Called Infotech Research Group. So I had a great time there, and then I got to talk to Cisco, HP, Fortinet, Akamai, all sorts of different companies doing research on WAN optimization, wireless networks. God, what else? Switching gear, like network switches. What the heck is it called? Oh, I don't think Akamai does this now, but oh
CDN?
god, I did do some research on CDNs, yeah, and I actually put out a vendor landscape about content delivery networks. It's the oh god, Cisco owns a company that does this,
Cisco
whatever
owns what?
Zscaler does, but it's like the
Oh,
like
like
the oh, like the
segmentation?
oh no, web content filtering.
Oh, okay.
Which thing anymore, at least not as big as it used to be, where everybody needed a web content filter, especially if you're working remotely and stuff like that. I'm sure there's still an industry around that, but I think it was much
Yeah,
bigger.
a lot of
Uh,
it's interesting to see a lot of security concepts just like evaporating, but then you have stuff that you know like firewalls that have been pretty much useless for the better part of a decade, but that industry is still alive and kicking. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas something like I think what you do is basically intrusion detection and prevention. I think is still really important. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it now, but recognizing the fact that there's something wrong, right? Whether you do that at the border, on device, or at the perimeter on device, or you see weird patterns in traffic leaving your network, right? Data is now being extracted. It seems like at least a lot of the bigger companies, and probably a lot of smaller companies too, are failing at just recognizing that something is wrong. And
yeah,
like
and that
I know when my laptop's not behaving properly. I know when my internet's not behaving properly here at home. So how what you would expect to be sophisticated firms aren't recognizing that somebody's pulling gigabytes and gigabytes of data from this server that is only supposed to ingest data. What the heck
yeah,
is
and
going
that
on?
goes back to what I said, about our product at Sternum, because if you're monitoring like a bunch of IoT devices, the ones that that you have, because a lot of organizations don't even know what they have. And when we're talking to the vendors that make those devices, they're telling us like we're in a problem, because, as I said earlier, we're making this product. It's being deployed in the field for 15 years. It's not being designed with security in mind for whatever
Hmm.
reason it is. And then when that device ends up getting popped, whoever bought that device from that vendor comes to the vendor with their complaints, but they're like, sorry, I mean, it is what it is. So, and all of
You
those
didn't buy the support package.
yeah, and all of those products that are like adjacent, like network based products, and those stuff, they often miss things for whatever reason, whether it's because traffic is encrypted, or data is being exfiltrated while there's a lot of traffic going on, so you can't they can't really differentiate between what is like legit and what is not.
Hmm.
So when you are on the device, which is what we do, you have access, you have visibility, and you have the ability to, like, sever, like, kill the problem as it happens, even before it happens. So as the exploit is being executed, that's where it gets severed.
Um, I think that's very important. And I actually want to. So I opened up the website just to see like kind of where you guys are playing at, and I think in an ideal world, you guys are selling directly to the device vendors because it helps them. It probably
Hmm.
helps them increase their sales. And then, of course, you're not dealing with 50,000 clients. You're dealing with like 500 clients, which I'm sure your go to market team and your BD team would much prefer. But I saw something really interesting is that you guys actually have like a free deployment for devices running OpenWRT.
Right.
I messed around with OpenWRT long time ago. That used to be, or DDWRT, which used to be my operating system of choice on my old Linksys
WRT
wireless router.
54G something, I'm guessing.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
everybody had that wireless router. Um, and then Cisco bought Linksys, and they made Linksys suck, and then Linksys got spun out again, and all of a sudden Linksys got their groove back. Thank goodness.
No,
But
they're owned by Belkin now.
they're owned by Belkin now. That's probably better than Cisco. Um, but like, have you seen a lot of uptick or a lot of uptake with that free DDWRT thing? Like, do you have people actively promoting that in those forums where people are talking about those products and still using those? Like, I ended up buying an Eero set of devices because I wanted the coverage, and I toyed with getting the paid plan, although I haven't yet. And I don't know if I will, but like I still always love this idea of like, yeah, I'm gonna buy something that will run OpenWRT, and I'm gonna mess around with all the modules and stuff like that. And now I'm actually really, really tempted because I would love to put something on like your product on there. So like, have you seen a lot of uptake? Or like, what kind of feedback do you get from that community and stuff like
So
that?
it's really interesting. So first of all, you'd be surprised by how many devices are actually running OpenWRT, because it's free and vendors use it. So it's not
Yeah,
only
that too. Yeah.
yeah, it's not only third. It's not only like a third party installation kind of thing, where if you want to tinker with your router and make it better, you'd install like DDWRT or OpenWRT or whatever. You have a lot of devices that are leaving the fact, like this smart outlet that I talked about is running OpenWRT.
Oh,
Yeah. So first of all, this was very surprising to me. I didn't know that so many vendors are using it. I thought that they are like home brewing their own distribution. But on the other hand, OpenWRT is so, they have like this entire infrastructure that is so great. So why not use it?
yeah.
As for the adoption rate for it, it's interesting because those who actually deploy it are very happy with it. But naturally, there is this suspicious tendency for people to say, Sternum, who is this company, like this small startup? Who are they? And they have this free product. Why should we put it on our devices? So there's a lot of trust building, and a lot of what we're trying to do. We're trying to be like more active on the relevant subreddits, and we're trying to like answer those questions and alleviate these concerns that people have. But we did see people adopting it. We did see people installing it. We did get feedback, and it's really cool. I mean, you can install it on your router, and you can in minutes you can start seeing trends. You can see what's going on. You can find possible issues, and if the product, EIV, embedded integrity verification, if the product will find an exploitation attempt, it will alert you and it will prevent that exploitation attempt. So it's really cool. The goal with this project was to get people to know more about us, and hopefully to cater towards the people who like to tinker with their devices and install things on them, and have those people bring the gospel of on-device protection by Sternum into their workplace, and say,
Yeah.
well, at home I have this, small embedded OpenWRT, sorry, router that I have, but at work I have, like, I don't know, 200 security cameras, or a million sensors, or a giant manufacturing machine that has a microcontroller that needs to be secured. So that was the purpose, and I think it worked pretty well.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to mess around with that. I didn't realize. Like, I do now remember. I think Belkin actually announced a few years ago, like, this is what we're doing. We're not building our own OS anymore, our own firmware. We're going to use, or probably maybe firmware, but we're going to use the OpenWRT. We might customize the GUI and stuff like that, but like that's the basis. And I remember
Yeah,
lots of people being excited about that. Linksys might be doing the same thing, especially since it's owned by
yeah.
Belkin now. So I do. After we started talking for a few seconds, I do remember that announcement a while ago. And then I used to have a Netgear Nighthawk, but I never got around to installing
And they
OpenWRT.
have an interesting, also, like, every month there's like one critical remote code execution.
That's one
um,
reason
uh,
why I stopped
so,
using Netgear Nighthawks.
yeah, but if you can install I don't remember if it's an ARM chip or a MIPS chip. There, I think it's ARM. But if it's ARM, you can install, if you have an SSH shell on it, you can install our product and be safe.
Yeah, cool. Um, Amit, thank you so much for your time. Especially dealing with the bit of a delay there at the beginning with the URL problem, and for
Yeah,
sticking
no
around.
problem.
If people want to see more about the things you have to say, especially on Twitter or LinkedIn, or learn more about Sternum, where should they go?
So about Sternum, our website, so sternumiot.com. Hopefully, very soon we're going to start and putting more content there. I'm actually going to make a series of videos. The first one is out, that actually demonstrates how easy it is to install the product on your home router, for example. And I'm gonna do some really cool instructional videos. For example, how to dump firmware straight from a chip. Like, if you have a device and you open it up like this and you want to get the firmware, how do you do it? I'm actually
Nice.
speaking on next week. I'm speaking at ShmooCon, and I'm giving a 15-minute talk about how to build an IoT lab like the one I have here that I showed you earlier. How to
Nice.
build one on a budget. Um, and if you want to follow the company, so as I said, on our website and on LinkedIn and on Twitter. I personally have left Twitter with following all of that turmoil, and I'm on Mastodon. So I'm active
Okay.
on Mastodon. So I'm on infosec.exchange. So it's my handle is at 0xamit, AMIT, at infosec.exchange. So
Okay.
that's where you can find me. And my personal blog is blog.amit.wtf.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Amit, thank you very much again. And for everybody listening and watching, thank you for your time. And until next time, stay free.